Good evening, everyone. It is very nice to see all of you and conduct the class after 2 weeks, I think, 2 weeks of a break. So I'm happy to be back. And it was also lovely to see all of you over yesterday, some of you, but we did think of everyone as well. Yeah, lovely. So now let us turn to page number. Okay, before we continue the class, let us chant Namo Tassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. All right. We stopped, or we went over Kammapacha during the last class, isn't it? Yeah, Kammapacha in the last class. We went over Kammapacha in the last class. And did we finish Kammapacha?
Yes, I think, Bhante, we read from the Lady Sayadaw's book 2.
Lovely. Just to recap on connascent and asynchronous Kammapacha. Connascent Kammapacha speaks of all of those dhammas that arise based on, or rather, if you put it in this way, the phenomena that arise connected to the volition contained within the 89 chittas that arise in cognizing the object of the moment. Connascent Kammapacha, right? So connected to or with the volition. We all know the statement, Chetanaham Bhikkave Kammam Vadami, right? Where Chetana or volition lays the foundations for the karmas to arise. In a similar pattern or notion, we find connascent Kammapacha connected to the volition that arises at that moment and referring to those karmas that arise connected to the respective volition of the moment, right? Asynchronous Kammapacha relates to the karmas that arise conditioned by past wholesome and unwholesome karmas produce, or rather wholesome and unwholesome karmas produced in the past, but giving rise at a specific time in the future. Not right at that moment, right? Not right at that moment. Hence, it is different from Sahajata Kammapacha. Is that clear, everyone? Right? If we just look at the table that I am sharing here on the screen, we have connascent Kammapacha, which is the conditioning states being the volition contained within the 89 chittas, right? Volition in the 89 chittas. The conditioned states become the 89 chittas and their respective 51 chetasikas, excluding volition. So that's why we have 51 chetasikas, excluding volition, because the volition becomes the conditioning state and the rest become the conditioned state. Why? Sahajata, right? Sahajata. Do you understand? right? Because it is sahajata, we have to take the volition of that moment out, because all of these phenomena and dhammas are arising at the same time, sahajata. Is that clear, everyone? Then going into asynchronous, we have the 33 past wholesome and unwholesome volitions, right? All that can produce karmic energy is taken into account here, right? Is taken into account, all accounting to 33, right? 33. The conditioned states become the 36 resultant chittas, their respective 38 chetasikas, and karma born matter that produces at the time, that is produced at the time of rebirth, owing to karmas of the past, right? So 36 resultant vipaka chittas, right? The conditioning states are the 33 past wholesome kusala and akusala karma chitta, right? The conditioned states become their respective 36 resultant chittas, 38 chetasikas, and karma-born matter, because karma-born matter is produced by karmas instigated in the past, right? Instigated in the past. Is that clear, everyone? Yeah. Shall we move on to any questions, or can we move on to vipaka pachaya? All right, shall we then move on? Yes? Clear, everyone? Okay, vipaka. Vipaka. Can you all see Lady Sayadaw's book? No? Okay.
It wasn't up there.
Okay. Can you see Lady Sayadaw's book now?
Yes, yes, can see, Bhante. Thank you.
Lovely. Good.
Bhante, if you expand slightly.
Of course.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Oh, that's
Very nice, lovely.
that's
Thank you.
good.
Okay. Right. Vipaka pachaya. The relation of effects. 36 classes of resultant consciousness and their concomitants are the relation of effect. 36 classes of resultant consciousnesses and their concomitants are the relation of effect, as they are mutually related to one another. The related things embrace all of them, as well as the material qualities born of karma at the time of conception, vipaka, and those produced by the resultant consciousness during life, right? Relating to material qualities born of karma at the time of conception, and those produced by resultant consciousness during life. In what sense is vipaka applied? It is applied in the sense of vipachana, which means a change of state from infancy or youth to maturity. In what sense is vipaka applied? It is applied in the sense of vipachana, which means a change of state from infancy or youth to maturity. Whose tenderness and maturity are meant? What is meant of the former is the infancy of past volition, which is also known as asynchronous karma. Right? Asynchronous karma. By maturity also is meant the maturity of the same karma. Here, it should be understood that each volition has 4 avattas or time phases. Chetana vatta, or the genesis of volition. Kamma vatta, or the continuance of volition. Nimitta vatta, or the representation of volition, and vipaka vatta. We are more familiar with vatta than vatta. Vipaka vatta. Or
Bhante, is it is same as what?
Yeah, vatta.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Or the final result. Here, although the volition itself ceases, or the final result, we mean vipaka vatta. Here, although the volition itself ceases, its peculiar function does not cease, but latently follows the series of thought. This is called kamma vatta, or the continuance of volition, right? Continuance of volition. Is that understood, everyone? Right? Again, if you might just, although the volition itself ceases, its peculiar function does not cease, but latently follows a series of thought. This is called kammavatta, or the continuance of volition. Right? This is to say, when the mind is directed upon a certain path, although the initial thought that convinced the mind of that specific path might have already come to demise or is no more, however, the essence that motivated the person upon that path still exists latently. Right? Example, let us take the act of eating. Right? We might decide to serve ourselves a plate of food and eat initially because we felt maybe the time for lunch or dinner or whatever has come about. Maybe we are hungry. Maybe the food is getting cold, whatever reason. We decide to eat. We also continue to eat, or maybe even go for a second serving. Although the initial thought or volition that convinced us to eat is no more, however, the essence of that thought is latently working in our minds, convincing us of an operation. That is kamma vatta, what it refers to here, kamma vatta. Do you understand? Right? When it obtains a favorable opportunity, and also before we move on, you would see how at the absence of kamma vatta or kamma vatta, it would be very problematic if this did not also happen. Right? If this did not happen. And at certain cases, this also becomes so, and it does not happen as strongly, right? This also comes the karmas that we develop, meaning the actions that we do, how strong they are in our consciousness. This is what we spoke about in terms of respecting one's own continuum or one's own mind, right? It is that sort of, for example, that strong conviction towards the Eightfold Noble Path is what also then convinces the mind to keep upon the path, and up until we achieve enlightenment at the time that we attain to the first stage of stream entry, where that power of karma is strong, where that power of karma is strong. When the power of karma is not strong, our minds change. Good if it is something bad that we are inclined towards. However, if it is something which is good or something which needs work, then we might surely lose out. Yeah, moving on. When it obtains a favorable opportunity for fruition, the karma represents itself to the person about to die. That is to say, he himself feels as if he were giving charity, or observing the precepts, or perhaps killing some creatures. If this karma fails to represent itself, a symbol of it is represented. That is to say, he himself feels as if he were in possession of the offerings, the gifts, the weapons, and so on. Or or anything with which he had committed such karma in the past, right? Anything with which he had committed such karma in the past. Or nimittak, a karme nimittak. Or sometimes there is a representation to him, the sign of the next existence, where he is destined to open his new life. That is to say, such objects as abodes or palaces of devas, or the fires of Niraya worlds, or whatnot, which as it will be his lot to obtain or to experience such in the existence immediately following. Enter the fields of presentation through the 6 sense doors. Enter the field of presentation through the 6 sense doors. These are called nimittavat, the representation of volition. The representation of volition. Is that understood, everyone? Yeah. Now, any explanation needed? It's clear, isn't it? Okay. Now, how are we to understand the vipakavatta? If a person dies with his attention fixed upon one of these 3 classes of objects, if a person dies with his attention fixed upon one of these 3 classes of objects, either on the karma itself, or on the sign of it, or on the sign of destiny, it is said that the karma has effected itself, or has come to fruition. In the immediately new existence, it has transmuted itself into a personality and appears, so to speak, in the form of a being in the new existence, in the form of a being in the new existence. This is called vipakavatta. This is called vipakavatta. right? How the object of karma has come into fruition, taken as an object, and then taken as an object, and then now appears, or the being appears within the form of that object, right? Within the form of that object. Now, in many of the stories that we do hear of persons who have come to experience such states, especially when we speak about Kamma Nimitta and Gati Nimitta, there is a deep sense of resonance with regards to Kamma Nimitta and Gati Nimitta in a way. Now, for example, if we are to see something out of the ordinary, be it wholesome or unwholesome, there can be a sense of surprise, isn't it? Right? There can be a sense of surprise. Now, for example, if you were to walk down to your kitchen or walk into your kitchen and you see things in your kitchen that you have not yourself brought into the house, and you know that no one else brings stuff other than you into the house, then you would be rather surprised, right? In a way that, you know, whether it be wholesome or unwholesome, right? When it comes to kamma or a gati nimitta, this nimitta itself, the essence of that nimitta, now let us say the burning of niraya and the divine, the objects of the divine abodes in gati nimitta, the gati nimitta of the divine abodes will bring a sense of calm and bliss. The fires will not bring a sense of calm and bliss, right? What I mean to say is this: when the object arises, a mind connected to that essence also arises. It is in that connection that we further fall into the trap. Do you understand? Further fall into the trap. So when we take examples from the Pretavattu, examples that we find in the Tripitaka, we find motions where even when Gati Nimittas were seen, other Nimittas were brought to light. That is in disconnecting the connectedness of the being to that Gati Nimitta and instilling another essence in the mind. That was done by powerful, strong beings. Arahants often were around these beings, isn't it? Right? But at the absence of such beings, at the absence of such beings who can pull you out, right? Who can pull you out of those positions, we often do fall. Right? That is why it is rather important to have a situation of mind where we are able to understand what is going on. Right? Let me tell you why. You might say, okay, Bhante, you know, if it doesn't change, if we see the hellish fires, we will go there. Right? So why bother? This is why you bother. The intensity of the depth that you fall determines the amount of time that you spend in those realms. That is why you bother. Do you understand? The more deluded that you are, the more ignorant that you are to what is happening, you will fall right on your head in a way where you will sort of feel that instability in such a manner that the foundation necessary for the full-blown karma to give rise will now persist, wholly because the mind gives in. Do you understand? Right? Now, if we take the hellish fires, right, because that is what we are all bothered about. if you take the hellish fires, the more unstable the mind becomes, the more fear and worry that will arise in the mind. The more worry and fear that arises in the mind, the potency of the karma increases. Do you understand? The potency of the karma increases. The lesser the potency of the karma due to the lack of foundation, the lesser time that we would have to go through that experience, or if our minds are strong enough, to free ourselves from that situation entirely. The more deluded we are, however, the greater that we fall into. Is that clear? Right? That is where the strength is then or comes into effect. Right? The strength comes into effect. Right? In the same manner, we know when we are reborn into the human plane, we have a different variation of levels, uniqueness. I mean, we are not all born into the same situation and circumstance. Right? We are born with different appearances and all of these things. All of that is determined by that unique signature of mind that we have. Right? That unique signature of mind that we have. For example, as Sri Lankans, a child that is born might be in Sri Lankan standards would be attractive. But a child that is born in another part of the world would be attractive in those standards with the same karmas. That is all dependent upon this mind that we are or regulate or have. Some people are, of course, non-meditators are unable to regulate this, but meditators are able to have a sense of control and to also cultivate, if wholesome arises, to further develop or further push up that wholesome itself. Right? Yeah. That is why mental stability at that point, which comes through meditative absorption, meditative experience, comes in handy. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. This is called Kamma Patta. Damsiri, you want to say something?
Bhante, now those nimittas come at the time of death, kamma nimitta and gati nimitta, and is the mind strong enough to free yourself of the bad circumstances? I thought the jhana chittas are all weak at the time, and the chittas, the chuti chitta, can you change it at the time by your free will?
Yeah, for some, Mala, this is what happens for some. The gati nimittas arise days before we fall or we start experiencing the chuti chitta viti. And in most circumstances, actually, although a person might not experience it days before, it would be even hours before, or at least a day before, that a person starts seeing the gati and kamma nimittas and the gati nimittas. It is not always. There are certain people who will experience it at the last moment, but it will not be mokada. Why? Because the chuti chitta viti needs to be given direction according to the kammavatta. Right? That direction is given before the chuti chitta viti arises. Right? Before the chuti chitta viti arises. The fact is, now if we go back, Mala, to the stories that we have all heard from our childhood with regards to those beings who were saved from those woeful places, right? Saved from those woeful places. They were saved because, or rather they were able to cultivate a sense of shraddha or wholesome consciousness because they were surrounded by beings who were worthy of respect. Now, this respect is very important. Right? We become, I mean, it becomes a very desperate situation during these last moments. Why? Because if we do not have respect, we do not listen. we do not accept the word of ourselves or the word of other people. In these circumstances, when the Arahants, I mean, just imagine, right? Just imagine we were in the presence of enlightened beings, a Buddha, right? I mean, we have nothing to doubt, right? We would wholeheartedly listen to their word. But the thing is, when we are surrounded by loved ones who we've lived for decades with, that relationship that we have with our loved ones, that relationship that we have with ourselves is sometimes not rooted in enough respect where they can pull us out. That is mundane life, right? That is where the insight gives you this power of respect. It is down to who or what will the mind listen to at that moment, Mala. It really is. It really is down to what or who will the mind listen to. Now, for example, people love listening to Pirit whilst they are in their last moments, right? People gain so much of bliss in simply just lying there listening to Pirit, isn't it? Why? Because we know we have been instilled by the idea, not only Pirit, even Christian prayers, Hindu prayers, Muslim prayers, reading of the Quran, whatever religious scriptures, people have so much of faith in these scriptures that, why? Because they have been given that glorified divine status. Do you understand? Right? That, what does that speak on? It speaks on respect. We have that sense of respect towards those scriptures to an extent where we feel enlightened in a way, elated in mind, that we sort of calm down, go into a state of tranquility. Right? That is where a meditator is able to cultivate the ability to now, not because, I mean, the reality of life is that sometimes, of course, when you have a partner or a husband or a wife or a daughter or a son, obviously things are not going to be perfect. Sometimes they are, most of the time they aren't, right? And these are just simply family members, people that you love, people who are your equals. Right? So obviously you're not going to have that sense of respect as one would respect a Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, for example. Right? So what do? As meditators, we learn to keep it real, respect the truth. And the truth or the fact of Vipassana or the truth of the Dhamma keeps us stable during those times. Right? During those times. Okay. Now, yes, Devika.
But
My question is, like when people get killed instantaneously, like for lightning, or it's their karma to get killed like the lightning, or some people just drop dead sometimes. Then what happens, Bhante? What would be what is the reaction that they will have at the moment of death?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Devika, we can't, although there is the potential or there is the ability to call it karma, we can't always say karma, right? That is one thing that we must relate, even if it is, for example, something like lightning, right? The person's foolishness of simply being outside under a coconut tree while it is lightning could have been the reason that he got sort of electrocuted, or sort of what's the word, shocked, right? Hit by lightning. Yes. Right? We can't really generalize and say this is a specific reason, right? But of course, the circumstance like on a clear day where there is no lightning, all of a sudden one lightning strike is
Yes,
struck,
yes.
and at that moment this man is struck by lightning. Of course, there's a very high possibility that he has done something pretty bad.
Something bad.
Right? Something pretty bad. The Chuti-chitta, the thing is, kamma nimitta gati nimitta. One of these arise.
Yes.
Right? And even before, because it is only a split of a moment that is required for the Chuti-chitta viti to run, right before that Chuti-chitta viti arises, the nimitta can be such, I mean, the potential around you is such that any of these objects can appear as nimittas. Right? Any of these objects can appear as nimittas. Now, for example, there are hellish realms where it is very cold. Do you remember, does anyone remember the name of the hellish realms where it is very cold? It's freezing. It's absolutely freezing. Right? These creatures cling on to, sort of, it says, the basin of the Chakravala, and at one point they fall off and they just shatter into 1,000 pieces like glass shatters, right? Because they're frozen, they're essentially frozen, right? Hence, if a person, now for a person who is going to be reborn in such a state, even the cold or the temperature can become a nimitta. Do you understand? Right? Even the temperature, remember, nimitta is an object. Karma nimitta is an object that represents a karma. Right? That represents a karma. So any of these things can be taken. So if a person is sort of goes through a death which is quite sort of unplanned, it just happens, still the Chuti-chitta viti will run. Still the Chuti-chitta viti will run. and that is a way the object can be of karma, or the object can be a present moment object. That wholly depends on the person. Because as I've mentioned earlier, with what we know of how the Gurunvan says did the treasure, the bandhana into treasures for the pretas and all of that to protect the treasures from thieves, how it was essentially, remember I told you that story of how it was done. They would be given the treasure, and when they are sort of rejoicing in the happiness of now being given the treasure, they would be killed and buried with it, right? So these are stories that we hear from the ancient time, right, which does not have any sort of standing within the Tripitaka. But I would think that these stories, in one way or another, we could put it together, right? But it can very well, we are speaking of potential, it can very well be karma nimitta or gati nimitta. The other thing to sort of to close my answer is to realize the complexity of karma. The fact that karma is not black or white. We have lived in samsara for so many sort of lifetimes, uncountable amount of lifetimes, uncountable amount of karmas that we have developed. The complexity of karma fruit is such that the Buddha has said that normal human beings like you and I are unable to understand that complexity, right? So we can't really sort of, if we are trying to understand, okay, how did this happen or how did that happen, it is really beyond our ability, because it is so complex. So many things have happened. So many things have happened. In these lifetimes, we have cultivated, developed so many wholesome, unwholesome karmas, such that it is really, we cannot ever, the Buddha says that we can never sort of end our storage of karma. Our storage of karma will never lapse. It is so vast, right? It is so vast. Yeah, Devika?
Yes, thank you.
So John, yes.
Bhante, the other thing we should consider is actually death is not a sudden thing.
Mm.
So even if somebody execute by electrocution, really takes few seconds
Mm.
for somebody to die.
Mm.
Even with the sort of connecting power to the chair,
Mm.
you can see, actually you can Google, and people take few seconds
Mm.
to die or stop heart.
Mm.
So we are talking about few seconds, but chitta is fraction, nanoseconds. So you can have few thousand chittas during if you really want.
Absolutely.
So the time scale wise, Chutichitsa is so fast
Mm.
that anyone who's facing the death
Mm.
can experience it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sujata, you wanted to say something? I remember.
Yes, Bhante, but that Devika asked the same question in another way. So I think I got the answer. Thank you, Bhante.
All right. Shall we continue? This
Yes.
is called Vipakavatta, or the
Bhante,
final. Yes, Noelin. Yes.
if someone dies in a coma,
Mm.
is it right that they don't get the receiving, investigating, and determining chittas?
Mm.
Is that right?
If someone dies in a coma, well, I would say it comes into a position where the thing is, the mind will be, as long as I
I think
would say,
this book, I read it.
I would say the position of the coma, what kind of coma the person in would be, sort of would determine what the person experiences or what kind of chittavitis arise. Regardless of whatever the coma is, if we are to consider the dying moment, right? If we are to consider the dying moment, the Chuti Chittaviti will run. Now, then the question is, Salayatana vada karanawada? If is there a possibility where sound is heard, right? Vibrations are felt. All of these things, I would say, I'm not proficient with all the types of comas, right? However, if certain objects, maybe some of the doctors, or I feel like Damsiri has something to say as well, so you can put in your thing. But if there are object impingement, if there is the impingement of object, then that would also make it different. Object impingement being there, the investigating and all of that could be there as well. Because remember, now let us say everything, the person is only able to hear or feel vibrations, right? So what would naturally happen would be that vibrations would be the only mode of feeling that person would have. Hence, arumunak vashe, that arumuna could be powerful for that person. Because if all the senses are cut out, just as, for example, if we are to not speak here, to not see and simply just hear or simply just feel, we would feel and hear far more, right? Just in that manner. So it would really depend on the type of coma and what the person would be experiencing. However, Chuti Chittavitis would surely run, right? Yes, Damsini?
Yes, they have done, Bhante, I have a couple of points to clarify that. They have done scientific analysis
Yeah.
of a person dying after switching off the life supporting machines.
Mm-hmm.
That means after coma. And they have actually found that at the time of the death, your brain functions suddenly come to full peak
Mm-hmm.
and then goes down to zero. So there's something called encephalogram. encephalogram, and they have identified at the time of the death, the sudden when you have a coma, there's minimum response from the encephalogram, and then suddenly EEG actually it's called, and then suddenly at the time of the death, you can see it peak to a normal level and then dies. That's one thing. The other thing is actually the I forgot. I forgot. Okay, there's another explanation of that one. So it is you can't say that. There's some evidence to prove that even though some people are on coma, they actually there's some scientific investigation. This they there are certain senses functioning, but you can't respond to it. So that means you get the aramana, but there's no response because the faculties are not functioning that part of the thing. So this is something you have to read more about the scientific investigation. So there's very clear evidence that even during the coma, when you die, you will come to the Chuti Chitta and you will go through the same process as normal person dying. Probably Mala will add a few words.
Bhante, in a case of coma, what they say is the hearing is the last thing to go. Out of the 6 senses, Chakusota Gandiva Kaya, you can't feel, you can't get any smell, you can taste. But the hearing stays to the very last moment. Even when you anesthetize a patient, sometimes they don't feel anything, they can't see and they can't feel any pain, but they can hear. That's why during the cesarean sections, they have said where the anesthesia very light because of the baby. The mothers can hear, but the surgeons can talk. So even so like that, in a case of coma, hearing is the very last thing that goes.
Okay.
Bhante, and actually, we were talking about the same thing few years ago. Mala as an anesthetist, sometimes she has to not anesthetize, participate in extracting body parts of a dying person. Then there was some research done that even though you are trying to take the body parts, right, the patient in the mind refusing or some sort of agony experience in that operation. So some anesthetists actually refuse to take part in this sort of operation because we are not 100% sure that the dying person, the perceptions are all zero.
Okay.
So that's the sort of again a situation with anesthetists actually experiencing this sort of a problem. So that shows that coma doesn't mean that person is 100% dead.
Okay. The agony, the pain is felt.
Yeah.
The sensations are felt. Okay.
Imagine somebody is trying to take your kidneys out, but you can't say anything. You know, that sort of situation. And patient may feel, but the responses are not functioning. So it's a sort of a something we don't know actually we look at the patient and try to do these things. But from the patient's point of view, we don't know exactly what's happening.
What's happening?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So in a scenario, maybe this is a dumb question, but in that sort of a scenario, Mala, if for example, I mean, a person is having a coma, and you are not sure about the position of the person and what the person is feeling, as an anesthetist, would you sort of give any sort of, I mean, would giving giving an anesthetic sort of help in that pain or whatever that could be felt, or is that not done? What is the practice, or does it not make a difference?
Bhante, if you're talking about a situation where you take the kidneys out in a patient, so-called a brain dead patient, the patient is dead and the patient comes for coma, but the patient doesn't come straight like that into the theater. Two sets of consultants have to confirm death and put it down in writing. There's a series of tests, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 done by the first consultant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by the second consultant to confirm the person is really dead. And then only the patient is taken to the theater to take the kidneys taken out for transplantation for another patient. But as a junior doctor, once I saw a long time ago, this patient has agreed to a kidney transplant. And while the tummy was open and while the surgeons were fiddling, the patient moved. Yeah, it happened. I have seen it happening.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was a so-called dead patient.
And what would be done at a position of that sort? Nothing.
That time nothing can be done because it was confirmed death and the patient was given a muscle relaxant to stop the patient moving.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so organ donation at the time of death is something to then be considered, isn't it then? Yeah. Okay. That's good. We all learned something, I guess. Anyone else who would like to add something or ask something? Dil, we can't hear you, Dil.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Bhante, even when you are in a coma, sometimes then people think that there's no chance of you recovering, and they ask the relatives to give consent for removing and stopping life support systems. And because they feel that all the organs, the vital organs have gone beyond the state of it recovering. It's a very difficult situation, and sometimes patients have, the relatives have to give consent. But there are sometimes when the relatives don't, and sometimes when doctors don't insist. And then what happens, and if they recover, they tell, like what Mala said, because hearing is the last thing to go off. A lot of the things that have happened, even in their death experience, they are able to, even what is happening in the next room. Anita Murjani talks about all those things that happened when she was, actually, people thought she was dead, but she didn't die when she came back. She could see what was happening in the next room and the conversations in the next room. So it's not only the things that you hear, but even the consciousness is such that you can see what's happening in the next room. And that is some of the reasons why some people don't want to give organ transplant for that same reason. Even eye donation, which is the cornea is donated, lots of people do, and most people do. And in fact, when you get your driving license, also they automatically, if you don't say otherwise, it's assumed that you're going to donate. But now, because of all this information, people are very, very conscious about it, whether they want it, because sometimes you recover afterwards and it's too late because the doctors are certified death and either removed, and as Mala says, or the muscle relaxants are given. But if you are aware of it, then you, and scientifically you know of it, then you think twice or thrice before, because and more cases, because people are going into these near-death experiences and things like that. They're finding that everybody thinks you can't hear or that you won't come back, but if you do come back, not everybody does, then they recount all these things, man. Thank you.
Yes, yes. All right. Shall we go back to the lesson then? Okay. So, any other questions before we continue? All right. This is called Vipaka-vattas, or the final result. Here, in the first three avattas, the volition is said to be in the state of infancy or youth. The last one shows, or youth. Lady Sayadaw, it says that Lady Sayadaw has not explained the Chetana Vatta, but it is easy enough to understand since it is the commission of the initial volition or karma. Yeah. All right. The last one shows that the volition has arrived in maturity and can affect itself. The last one, right? Therefore, as has been said, Vipassana means a state from infancy or youth to maturity. Thus, Vipaka is the name assigned to the states of consciousness and their concomitants, which are the results of volition. The results of volition, or to the matured volitions themselves, or to the matured volitions themselves. Right. So here, Chetana Vatta, just to grab your attention, just to put that into context, which we have just read here, this part, please. Chetana Vatta, Kamma Vatta, Nimitta Vatta, Vipaka Vatta. Right? Starting from the Chetana, Kamma, Nimitta, and Vipaka, maturation. Right? Thus, Vipaka is the name assigned to the states of consciousness and their concomitants, which are the results of the volitions, or to the matured volitions themselves. Or to the matured volitions themselves. Just as mangoes are very soft and delicate when they are ripe, so also the resultant states are very tranquil, since they are inactive and have no stimulus. Since they are active and have no stimulus, they are so tranquil that objects of the subconscious are always dim and obscure. On reviving from the subconscious, one has no consciousness of what its object was. For this reason, there is no possibility of occurrence of a process of thought. Shall we go through that again? Just as mangoes are very soft and delicate when they are ripe, so also the resultant states, Vipaka, are very tranquil, since they are inactive and have no stimulus. Since they are inactive and have no stimulus, I think we can understand what they mean by this, isn't it? Right? Because karmas, in karma chittas, karmas are created. There's activity there. Something is done, energy is created, behaviors changed, new pathways established. Vipakas is a process of experiencing, a process of being, process of unfolding or seeing what is unfolding, right? Since they are inactive and have no stimulus, they are so tranquil that the objects of subconscious are always dim and obscure. On reviving from the subconscious, one has no consciousness of what its object was. On reviving from the subconscious, one has no consciousness of what the object was. For this reason, there is no possibility of occurrence of a process of thought which can reflect the object of the subconscious. Thus, such and such an object has been met with in the past existence. Although in sleep at night, the subconscious takes for its object one of the three classes of objects, kamma, kamma nimitta, and gati nimitta, which has been experienced before at the time of approaching death. This is talking about the instance of us experiencing it during a time of sleep. In the immediately preceding existence, right, which has been experienced before at the time of approaching death, in the immediately preceding existence. Hence, it is that one knows about any, hence, it is that one knows nothing about any objects from the past existence, either in sleep or in waking. Thus, the mutual relationship by way of inactivity, non-stimulation, and tranquility is termed the function of vipaka. Right? Is termed the function of vipaka. So what does this part mean? It is talking about the nature of vipaka. The nature of the mind as vipaka comes to arise or comes to work at that time. At that time. Even at the process of bhavanga, at the bhavanga process, bhavanga is a position that is very, it is a state that we do not see. Although we experience bhavanga, we do not see it. We do not really experience it, since it is, as explained here, relationship by way of inactivity, bhavanga, or any other vipaka, inactivity, non-stimulation, and tranquility is termed the function of vipaka. Because it does not produce but exhaust. It does not produce but exhaust. In not producing, when karma is not experienced, cultivated, developed, created, there is no stimulus. Right? So even, for example, every passing moment with the salayatanas, the six sense bases, we have the exhausting of the respective salayatana supportive karmas, isn't it? Ahetuka karmas. Right? Ahetuka karmas. Chakku sota gana jibha khaya. However, ahetuka karmas essentially don't feel like anything. Do they feel of anything? They don't. But simply exhaust in supporting the function of consciousness, in supporting the prasada rupas. The prasada rupas, the mind connected to prasada rupas with conditioning, then sort of does the rest of the task. But that is not ahetuka karma. That is karma. Do you get it? That is karma. The ahetuka karma stops at the position of energizing, for example, the eye, prasada rupa. And that stops there. That we don't feel. The rest which is done by what we take in from the eye is a karma. That is not in discussion here. Karmas or vipakas rather are simply exhausted. That is why inactivity, non-stimulation, and tranquility. Right? Any questions? When it comes to the position of pratisanti, right? When it comes to the position of vipaka karmas now giving rise in those respective states, what happens there? Right? What happens there? Then we have to look at it from karmavatta. Laying or putting us into a direction, and that direction takes us there. The karma, the volition maturing into karma, the volition maturing into karma, karma now taking a specific object with, for example, jhana nimitta, and then giving result. Is that clear, everyone? Jhana, look at this. Look at this, these 4 words here. It will make more sense. The chetana to go into jhana. Right? The chetana that powers our jhana path. The karmas, the energies that helps us to instill, to bring about jhanic state. The jhana arises, or the jhanic state arises, and now the mind takes a jhanic state as nimitta. Based off that nimitta, now the vipaka arises. Right? If that is a example of the whole sort of nimitta, from if the nimitta survives up until death, we will go into the respective jhana plane after our rebirth if we want to. But if we sort of draw it in, volition to go into the nimitta, go into the jhana or attain to the jhana, right? Arising of the energy to arouse the jhana within us, taking of the nimitta, and in spirit of that nimitta that we take, which is the jhana consciousness, or the jhana nimitta also in certain circumstances arises a vipaka. Arises a vipaka. The vipaka, now exhaustive, tranquility, non-stimulus. Is that clear? Is that clear, everyone? Any questions? Yes, Shriyani.
Bhante, that means unless you meditate and you have developed your state of your mind to that level, you will not reach that kind of jhanic nimitta.
Jhanic nimitta, jhanic consciousness is one which is higher than what the vibration of the kama vachara bhumi is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any type of consciousness, even within the kama vachara plane, even now let us say dvihetuka or a omaka karma being, or no, let's forget omaka, dvihetuka karma being, right? To consider or to arouse a trihetuka wholesome karma is also challenging. In a similar way, for the kama vachara bhumi puggala to arouse a Rupavachara or Arupavachara karma is also something which is challenging. However, in all aspects, volition arises or has to arise initially. In all circumstances, without the volition, right? Without the volition, the process will not start. That is what it is speaking about. Without the volition, the process will not start. That can be applied to the time that we are rookies starting off our meditative practice, or at the time that we have the jhanas, right? And we sort of bring the jhanas up every time that we want to, or even before death. Is that clear, Shriyani?
So that means your thoughts and your last moment, your mind is settled into sort of your last minute you're breathing, isn't it? The last breath, you know, that is the time that it will go into your habit. Habitually, your mind will go there as a habit because you've been practicing and you've been doing this. It's like it's like a normality for you, for your thought and your mind, your consciousness to go to that state. Is that right?
කාමවචර භූමියේ මූලික අරමුණක් වශයෙන් මනුස්සෙක්ට ආවචර වෙන්නේ කම්සපය. කම්සපය විඳින පුද්ගලෙක්ට ධ්‍යාන ශක්තියක් හටගත්ත අවස්ථාවක ඒ කම්සප විඳපු පුද්ගලයාට දැන් ආවචර වෙන්නේ රූපාවචර ඥාන ශක්තිය. කලින් මෝතවල් වල අපේ ජීවිතේ කම්සප විඳින්න අපි හැම වෙලේම උත්සාහවත් වීමෙන් ජීවත් වුණාට දැන් අපි උත්සාහවත් වන්නේ රූප ඥාන ශක්තියත් එක්ක ජීවත් වෙන්න. When we go beyond that stage and go into Arupavachara, now we are not really, our life does not revolve around Rupavachara, it revolves around Arupavachara. It is somewhat like Shriyani, koi gihat, api gedara enawa. Right? It is something of that sort. Yeah.
So that means the mind comes to the level, the stage that you have trained your mind. Is that right?
The mind becomes the stage that we have trained, not comes to, becomes.
Ah, I see.
The mind becomes the stage that you have trained.
So the moment of death, it does happen?
Yes, absolutely. Because the persons before attaining jhana are not the same persons when they attain jhana. They will change forever, even if they lose the jhana.
Ah, okay. Understand.
Yeah. It is in that learning, it is in that learning, Shriyani, that enables a person to go into jhana whenever they wish to.
Yeah. Understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, need to practice more. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah, no sleepy tonight.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
Bhante,
Yes, no.
if you haven't practiced meditation during your lifetime,
Okay.
is it difficult for you to control your last thought?
No. For some people, the kusala mind itself instills the people or the person in a state of calm and tranquility. For example, when a person sort of, let us say, eats, sleeps, and breathes the Dhamma, if I might put it in that manner, right? Motivated by Dhamma, showers the Dhamma, in a way, every aspect of the person's life is in the spirit and motivations of the Dhamma. For such kind of a person who is truly inspired by the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, for such a person, the wholesome chitta itself brings the mind to a state of tranquility. the Buddha says to Ananda, there are two bhikkhus. One is in the city and the other is in a forest. The one in the city meditates and attains to jhanic states. The one in the forest sleeps the whole day. Who do I commend? Ananda says, Bhante Bhagava, you would commend the one who is making continuous effort in the city, right? Not the person who is sleeping in the forest. The Buddha says, no, Ananda, I would commend the person sleeping in the forest. For the person in the city will lose the jhana quick with all the araman around the person, but the one in the forest would one day get up and realize the importance of jhanic bliss, silence and tranquility, and his mind will be at peace, supported by the peaceful abidings that he abides by. Hence, Ananda, I commend the sleep of the one who is a forest dweller. But to be fair, I'm in Colchester, there's a lot of forest here. But why I said that is, with that, the Buddha points out the danger of Bahu Aramana. Right? Because these aramanas are fed or present itself in front of you through the mundane world which is around. The mundane world has no inclination of peace and tranquility. The mundane world has an inclination of captivating your attention towards karma. Because we are in the karma bhumi. Right? That is why some sort of meditative practice, even if it is not sitting down anapanasati, metta meditation, walking meditation, some sort of contemplative awareness, the rosary, buddhanusati, dhammanusati, sanghanusati, chaganusati, devatanusati, some sort of contemplative awareness, something that allows the person to develop the skill of decluttering the mind. That skill is important. That skill is important, not only to persons who are sort of in fear of death or who are in their mature years. It is a skill that is important to every class of being living on this earth, because we all go through the stress of having our minds full of things that really at the end of the day does not bring benefit to us, and things that we can't really also do much about. Yeah, that is why, right?
Very interesting, Bhante. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
explanation was lovely.
Yeah. So even if, because I know that some of you feel as if, it is very difficult to meditate and all of that, even if it is so, do the Buddhanusati that we have discussed, pray, right? Turn your prayer and chanting into a meditation. You know what I mean? Right? You might have, for example, you might have relatives who are sickly, or you might have children or grandchildren who are doing their exams. Use them as a motivation. Pray onto a bottle of oil and go rub oil on their heads, maybe. Somehow, some sort of inspiration to do chanting, do Buddhanusati, some sort of meditative awareness would help the mind to now come into the present moment, where you are now sort of, getting more comfortable with a state of mind which is instilled in tranquility and peace. Yeah. Yes, dear.
Two questions, Bhante. So first is, when you are answering to Sriyani, when you are talking about, if you have reached a jhanic state sometime before and then later you die, when you're not meditating on, is that what is called go through the change of lineage? Is that what is called go through the change of lineage? That because you have reached a jhanic state at some point, that there's a change of lineage after that, so that even much later when you're dying, that
No, change of lineage does not happen with jhana, isn't it? Because if the change of lineage, does change of lineage happen? It doesn't happen with jhana.
it's only with Sotapanna and
It's only
Sakadagami.
with insight, because if you have a change of lineage, you can't go from you can't go from Goigama to Radala and from Radala come back to something else. No, you can't come down again. You have to stay there, right? So it is something like that. You can't come down. So it only happens because Gotrabu and Anuloma and all these positions, they are about insight.
So that's when you go from like Sotapanna to Sakadagami with meditation and with insight, is it?
Yeah, that is only about insight. That is because with jhana, we can lose jhana.
Right.
We lose jhana when the hindrances come up.
Yeah.
Right? So when the hindrances come up, what we factually come back to is the same position that we were in. However, how we are different is we have some sort of knowledge that we have equipped ourselves through experience of having the jhanas, which would allow a person to go back into the jhanas. Should the person be able to now let go of the jhana that the person once had? Meaning, some people lose jhanas, they are so attached to their previous jhanas that they don't cultivate new jhanas, or they are unable to cultivate new jhanas, right? So being in the moment becomes very important if the person has lost a jhana and is now trying again to go into jhana. Yeah, so that is why we emphasize on the fact of letting go of evil, letting go of sankhara.
Yeah. So Bhante, coming from what you told now, this is why mindfulness, like the first factor of the Bojjhanga, is so important, because other than the regular practice of meditation, be it doing vipassana or just doing samatha or the anusati, it's so important because being mindful in the moment and realizing that your mind states are going from neutrality to any of those, if you catch them, then you can use all these tools that you're mentioning to see that you can transmute that moment without keeping on proliferating your thoughts, Bhante. So that even when you're not meditating or doing your regular practice or listening to a Bhana sermon or in the daily work, that you have to be very alert that whether you're having thought or your work, in your thoughts, but reaction, that you're not doing anything that is going to be a negative, like fear coming in, because then you can transmute it very quickly, because otherwise, if you're not mindful in the moment, that will keep on proliferating.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that is really the practice, moment to moment. Even when you're just walking, I mean, we are now always told when we are walking, if you can do it in a more meditative stance, even when you're doing other things, not that very slow movement, which you can't be doing in daily life, but that at least it's the fact the movement and touching the ground and getting energized is also very helpful. That's why they are stressing now more and more to be aware of this. That's what the science behind that. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah.
Very, very useful, the discussion, the whole chapter today.
Thank you, Dil. iPad, you had, I think this is Padma.
Yeah. No, I was, where am I? Yeah, I was just trying to see whether I could have another look at that paragraph of yours that you showed, the previous paragraph on the book.
This one.
Yeah. And no, the 47, I think. Okay. Just to have another look. Yeah, that's about the ghost story. Yeah, that's right. I just want to see that. And you said something about sleep at night. So of course, all these things keep happening all the time. Is that correct?
It happens all the time. It happens now at a position of sleep. If we are just basically talking about sleep is an experience of bhavanga. Right. When a kamma nimitta or gati nimitta arises, the bhavanga stream would be, of course, disturbed, right? And this sort of kamma nimitta or gati nimitta will arise, right? And then the mind will go with that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the chuti consciousness will arise with sleep.
Yeah. Okay, but that's at the time of death.
That is at the time of death.
Yeah.
Right?
And
That is at the time of death.
Yeah. What I want to know is at other times too, this process goes on, isn't it? Does it go on?
At other time, what do you mean by this process?
This, this karma, the vipaka.
Yes, the vipaka, even at this moment, Padma, even for you to sort of see and read this, the process is going on because vipakas are exhausting itself. But thing is, if we realize we don't feel the exhaustion of the vipakas.
No.
Right? That is because, but we do know and feel if you're moving our hands, if you're speaking, if you're sort of, our eyes feel a bit drained looking at the screen, we, whatever. And when we get off the meeting after the class, your ears will feel a little bit more sort of a little bit like you're having a bit of a break, isn't it? That we feel exhaustion from. Why? Because those are karmas.
Right. Okay.
Vipakas, we don't feel anything because it is, again, as it mentions in that essence, inactivity, non-stimulation, and tranquility.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it happens to us all the time.
All the time. All
Okay.
the time.
Right. Thank you. That's what I want. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? All right. So if you don't have any questions.
One more question.
Yes.
What you explained just now, is that what you call the pravritti vipaka?
Pravritti vipaka.
During the lifetime? Pavatti vipaka?
Pravritti vipaka. Pravritti vipaka.
What you feel during the lifetime? Or in Pali it's called pavatti.
How would we define pravritti vipaka?
What the vipaka you get during the life existence?
Mainly, there are two types of vipaka, pravritti and patsandi.
Yeah.
So that's
it would fall under pravritti vipaka if it is exhausting within that lifetime, right?
Yeah.
But now if we go to this, let us use a chart. Vipaka Pachaya, right? Vipaka Pachaya, number 14. Both at rebirth and existence, right? So it can be pravritti vipaka and patsandi vipaka because of kammaja rupa.
Yeah.
Right? So we didn't sort of go through the chart. If I might have 5 minutes more, please, everyone. Both at rebirth and existence, 36 resultant chittas, their respective 38 chaitasikas, which support each other and connascent matter, sahajata rupas, condition the arising of 36 resultant chittas, 38 chaitasikas mutually. Connascent matter excluding two intimations, verbal and bodily intimation and vocal intimation. Why? Vipaka. Bodily and vocal intimation produce. Vipaka doesn't produce. No? Yeah, vipaka does not produce, right? Vipaka does not produce. It is again tranquil, inactive, and that other tranquil, inactive, and non-stimulation, inactivity, non-stimulation, and tranquility. Right. Two intimations. Right. Right. Now, let us quickly read karma result. Let's just read this. So then we are done with this part entirely. right? This is the compendium's vipaka pachaya. Result condition is a condition where a conditioning state makes a conditioned states arise together with it be as passive, effortless, and quiescent as itself, right? The conditioning states in this relation are the resultant chittas and chetasikas. The conditioned states are those same resultants with respect to each other and the connascent material phenomena. Since resultants are produced from the maturing of karma, they are not active but passive and quiescent. Thus, in the mind of a person in deep sleep, the resultant bhavanga consciousness arises and passes away in constant succession. Yet, during this time, no efforts are made for action by body, speech, or mind, and there is not even distinct awareness of an object. This is relating to the vipaka effect. Similarly, in the five-door cognitive process, the resultant chittas do not make an exertion to know the object, their object. It is only in the jhana phase that effort is made to clearly cognize the object. And again, it is only in the jhana phase that actions are performed. Okay, everyone? Good. Any questions?
Bhante, I have a question.
Yes.
This is what, like thinking about this bhavanga citta, like when you are sleeping, why do sometimes people wake up with bad dreams and scream?
Yeah, so bad. So at the moment now, sleep, that is why we define sleep as bhavanga. So anything, so according to Buddhism, anything other than the bhavanga is disturbed or not sleep. Right? And according to, for example, what is mentioned in the Mettanisansa, what is mentioned in the Mangala Sutra, there are benefits and the commentaries which enlists the benefits of metta and the practice of Dhamma. That does not apply to the disturbed sleep. That applies to bhavanga sleep, right? Which speaks about the healing brought about by sleep, which is bhavanga sleep. With regards to dreams, the Buddha has spoken of 4 reasons as to why those dreams occur. I can't remember one of them. One is because of the imbalance of the dhatus. The other is devadinna, given by or dreams shown by gods. The other is dhatu, devadinna. Anyone else remembers? Dhatu, devadinna. Dil, would you remember? No, huh? Okay, I will find out for the next class. It's in the Vishuddhimagga.
All right.
Yeah. Reasons for sleep.
Okay, Bhante.
I will find.
Interested in knowing.
Yeah.
Bhante,
Yeah.
about Devika's question, write it, you dream during the REM sleep, rapid eye movement time. So the bhavanga chitta must be the non-REM sleep.
Deep sleep.
Deep sleep. Deep
Yes.
sleep and non-REM sleep are the same.
Yeah.
And REM sleep, you dream.
Yes.
Rapid eye movement time.
The REM sleep.
Rapid eye movement.
The REM sleep is, however, spoken of in a lot in Tibetan Buddhism, although not in Theravada Buddhism. Because in Tibetan Buddhism, it speaks about cultivating or developing the ability of going into states known as the Bardo states, which speaks about also, for example, going to sleep and sleeping mindfully, right? Going to sleep and sleeping mindfully. Sleeping mindfully, and also being able to Venerable Naga, so this is the answer to Venerable Nagasena has stated that there are 6 causes of dreams. So it is not in the Vishuddhamagga, it's in the Milinda, right? 3 of them being organic, wind, bile, and phlegm. The 4th is due to the intervention of supernatural forces, right, which is Devadinna. And the 5th, revival of past experience because of past experiences. And the 6th is the influence of future objects, nimitta, anagata nimitta, right? Influence of future objects, right? It is categorically stated that dreams occur only in light slumber, which is said to be like the sleep of the monkey. Of the 6 causes given, Venerable Nagasena has stated positively that the last, namely prophetic dreams, like prophecy, dreams are the only important ones, and the others are relatively insignificant, right? And the others are relatively insignificant. Yeah, this it was on a article by K. Sri Dhammananda. I'll share it on the Dhamma group if anyone wants to read it.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
That means, Bhante, no dreaming in deep sleep.
No, there is no dreaming in deep sleep, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
There is no dreaming in deep sleep. So if, for example, a person is a dreamer, actually that is something, and sometimes people actually enjoy dreaming, right? And they look forward to having a nice dream, right? But you know, for meditators, something that we do experience is we do not dream, right? Yeah, Damsiri.
That's why they say sweet dreams.
Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams. Dreamers. All right, everyone. So that marks the end of the class. I will see you all tomorrow for morning meditation. All right. Take care and Teron Sannai.
Bhante, Wednesday Sutaka class.
Thank you, Bhante.
So we will have a Deshana happening on Thursday. A special Deshana which is going to be happening on Thursday. I will send out the details to everyone, and we will of course be having the Sutra class as well, right? So take care, everyone, and goodbye for now.
Thank you.